Hey, this is Ryan Steele, and you're listening to the Give and Go podcast.
To the Give and Go Basketball podcast. I am here with Ben Sperry and Ryan Steele. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube because we are starting to push out more and more content every day. You might have noticed that we have our new segments up called Fast Breaks, where we just do real quick debates. We have Ryan is doing This Day in History stuff now. Be on the lookout for our new thing that's coming shortly called ISO Shots. And then here's the biggest news of the day. We're about to be going onto Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, Google. We're going to be streaming everywhere. We're going to be everywhere. So you just be ready for that. So let's go ahead and get into the show, gentlemen. Just recently, the 2021 Hall of Fame inductee class was announced. So I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on that. Ben, if you want to start for me.
Yeah, so just this week, as Mitch said, the finalists for the 2021 class were announced. They're going to include Rick Adelman, who was a longtime coach in the NBA, won a lot of games. Chris Bosh, who retired relatively recently. Michael Cooper from the 80s Lakers. Paul Pierce, who, of course, has had a pretty recent career in media career as well. Bill Russell is a coach this time for his 2 years as a player coach. Jay Wright from Villanova. Yolanda Griffith from the WNBA, as well as Lauren Jackson from WNBA and WNBA coach Marion Stanley. So there's also a few other finalists that are considered again this year that have been previously considered, which include Tim Hardaway from the 90s, big Miami Heat guy, Marquez Johnson, and then Ben Wallace and Chris Webber. So we have a lot of people that are in consideration, and this comes after, last year, the Hall of Fame class that was selected but didn't get to have their official induction ceremony, which was loaded with Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, and Kobe Bryant, as well as WNBA star Tamika Catchings. So it's going to be a big year. A lot of guys that we grew up watching may be inducted or about to be inducted. So this is a chance for us to talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame.
So I'm looking at this finalist class, and I think it's easier than some people give it credit for to decide if they're Hall of Fame worthy or not. I mean, I'm just going to pose it to you guys. Yes or no? Let's go through it. Chris Bosh, Hall of Fame, yes or no?
Yes.
To me, it's a yes. Pretty easy.
Yeah, I think so.
Paul Pierce, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. Pretty easy.
Yeah, I think it's fair.
Michael Cooper? No. I don't think a guy who was a just because you're on a great team you just don't just get in because of that. I mean, he was a great defender. Okay, C-Web. To me, unanimous. Yes. Yeah. He's a great player. Tim Hardaway. I think today's metrics hurt Tim Hardaway.
Yeah.
I do think he's one of the better point guards of his time. I think it's a different time, though. And then Ben Wallace, for what he did defensively, I think it's a yes. Just some of this stuff, it should be easier than what the Hall of Fame for basketball makes it. Like, some guys are clear-cut Hall of Fame worthy players, and some guys just get in because the Hall of Fame for basketball is a lot easier to get into.
Yeah, so that's actually what I was going to say. Is maybe it's too easy in a sense in the NBA because they're pretty lenient. It seems comparatively to football and baseball. Where there's huge backlogs on Hall of Fame type talent that haven't been inducted yet. Whereas basketball, there's guys that are still getting inducted from previous generations.
Right.
But it seems like we got a lot of people in. So maybe this is a good discussion to break it off or to kind of segue into here. Maybe it would help if we thought of the Hall of Fame not as just yes or no, but if yes, what tier are you in the Hall of Fame? because I think there's a clear difference even between like a Ben Wallace or a Michael Cooper if he gets in, and even a Chris Webber, right? Or Chris Webber / Tim Hardaway, and then a Kobe, Tim Duncan, and Kevin Garnett. Maybe what I'd call these is there's the impactful career tier, the best of your generation type tier, and then the greatest of all time tier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
like
I mean, because and then this is the one troublesome thing with the Basketball Hall of Fame is a lot of guys, when we say impactful careers now, there's so many guys that have impactful, to us, foreign careers.
Yeah.
Arvydas Sabonis, like we didn't find out about him till he was old and almost washed when he had a legendary career overseas. There's so many guys like that they get in because they had impactful careers to the game of basketball, not necessarily impactful careers to the NBA.
That is true.
And so that's kind of the thing is if we're just keeping it basketball, then yeah, impactful careers could go for college, international, NBA. But like you said, best of your generation, yeah, you got some guys like, Darren Williams I mentioned him in the last pod. Is he an all-time great? No, I wouldn't put him in that class. He didn't have the longevity that Chris Paul had, but in his time, his peak, 8-year, 9-year window, top 4 point guard in the league for sure. You can't deny him.
So he'd be one of those best of generation types.
I would think he's a best of generation kind of guy. Good.
No, I think that's the way to look at it. I mean, even looking at this class, I mean, like, for instance, I already said it, but like Bryant, Garnett, Duncan, those are among the greatest players of their possessions of all time.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, they should be, if you say their name, you don't have to think. Like, you should have to ponder, hands down, Hall of Fame.
Right. But then you get to certain guys that have both made it in the past, whether they were, and Michael Cooper's an example that might be is a finalist this year, but like guys from the past, like that were on the 60s Celtics, but they were role players on the 60s Celtics, but they won 8 or 9 championships, right? Do they get in? Like the Casey Jones of the world. Those are impactful players, I suppose, if that's the tier they're going to get in on. Or like some of these players that have the international careers.
Like Draymond. Like, let's say the Warriors win one more ring before they all retire.
Well, let's say they don't. Does Draymond get in right now?
Right. Let's say they don't. Yeah. He's got Defensive Player of the Year. He's got all defensive teams.
He might have been on an All NBA team too, but yeah.
One All-Star appearance, one All NBA team.
Yeah.
But is he really a Hall of Famer or just one of those guys who was great to have on your team and helped you win?
Yeah.
And then there's guys like, let's say, LaMarcus Aldridge, who's almost towards the end of his career. And we're looking at Chris Bosh. We're looking at Chris Webber. Same kind of career there, didn't do a lot of winning, but was one of the best at his position. And LaMarcus, I mean, he's been in the league for a while. He had a crowded Western Division that he competed in for a lot of years with Tim Duncan and Dirk and a lot of these guys that were, all-time great. So it's all in the tiers to me, how you want to label some of these guys.
And it's about these things, right? So like Joe Johnson had who knows how many All-Star games by the end of his career.
Joe Johnson was overrated, underrated, and overrated in like a 5-year span.
And maybe even historically he's now underrated because you realize how good he is when he's still balling out like the big three and stuff.
Sir.
Right? But so does somebody like that, should they be in the Hall of Fame one? And then, but if they are, I mean, I think we know what category somebody like that's in. They're a best of generation guy. You could argue, I suppose. But I think the more bothersome tier for me, like even if you're going to let those guys in, which is more like the Hall of Very Good, so to speak, is the impactful career people that, whether they're international or they're getting in partially for their college career or whatever it might be, those ones I think are more bothersome because then you can think of guys that were better in the league at the time, but because of situation, team they were on, injuries, whatever.
Or maybe a guy played 1 year in college because he was so good and went to the NBA and was better than this dude ever was in the NBA. But because this guy went to college, played 4 years, scored all these points, he gets in the Hall of Fame over a guy who's actually just better at basketball than he is,
It's tough.
I'm just going to say this. I like the tier idea. I do.
Yeah.
I respect it because I think it gives, like you said, Ben, the greatest of all time their due. But I might have to play a little devil's advocate here, because it's the Hall of Fame. It's not the Hall of you played on a good team or the Hall of you had a good stretch of 3 to 4 years. And that's where I kind of think, okay, you have guys like Bill Russell, the player Bill Russell. You have like the top tier guys in there, and then you're bringing in somebody like a Michael Cooper who probably, I don't know, I'm throwing out a number here, 80% of basketball fans probably might not even heard of. And so that's where I
depending
think,
on your age.
depending on your age, yes. But that's why I think, I like the Hall of Fame, and you just get to the point where you're just sending in the greatest players of all time, like the Duncan.
No, I mean,
the
that
Kobe,
would be great.
That's what I want.
We're at this point in real world where they never did that. So we're at where we are with the Hall of Fame for basketball.
And what is it? And quote me if I'm wrong here. What the NFL only allows like 4 guys in a year or something like that, or what is it? It's something.
It's pretty limited, right?
So like,
I don't remember the exact
number. I think it's like 4 players.
Yeah.
I think you're allowed to do like a coach or somebody like that. I think only 4 players.
And then there's all these like after so long you can't get reconsidered again until you're part of like an older group. So there's a lot of things that make it harder to get in the football and baseball Hall of Fames. And now also something that's interesting, like, I mean, this is called the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame. So it's really not, I guess, limited in that sense to the NBA. That's why they have WNBA players, women's players, international players, as well as coaches that make it. But it is interesting because when you think of Hall of Fame, they should be guys that you, as if you're a serious basketball fan, know who they are and what they're about just by hearing their name. And maybe it's been a little bit too lenient when there's guys that get in that you wouldn't say were even top whatever on their team when they play.
Right. My final shot on this is let's see Webb in. Quit being weird about the college stuff. Yeah, he won't admit to taking stuff. Who cares? Let that man in and stop being weird towards him.
Well, and C-Webb, like, he was so good when he played.
So good.
He was an unbelievable power forward, and that was a stretch where it was actually harder to get into an all-star game.
And he made all those all-star games.
He made 5, but if he would have played in that Eastern Conference,
he made so many of those.
Right. I was going to suggest he could have made so many more if he wasn't behind Dirk and Duncan and Garnett and all these guys at the same time. Rasheed Wallace, like, there's just so many power forwards that are all in the West at the same time that were elite.
Let him in, man.
It's a tough one.
Well, give us your thoughts below. Let us know what you think, who you agree, who you disagree with. Let us know who you think is going to get in, who should be in, who shouldn't be in. Hey, this is the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Stay tuned. We got a great show, rest of the show coming up. Thanks. Thanks for listening to the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Welcome back to the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Host Mitch Shreve along with the 2 basketball gurus, Ben Sperry and Ryan Steele. And we are going to talk about a kind of a hotter topic this NBA season with a lot of technicals being given out by officials, a lot of ejections happening. Ryan, why don't you start us off with this one?
I was just on my phone last week, and the Devin Booker ejection came down against the Lakers. And then I started thinking back to a few weeks prior with JJ Redick getting ejected for kind of the same thing, just basically bouncing a ball to an official. Yeah, was it soft? No, it was a hard bounce pass, but we're ejecting guys for bounce passes. I mean, JJ Redick has done that throughout his career. If you've watched him, he's always spun the ball to an official. And these are 2 guys who are, kind of the good guys in the NBA. They're not, trash talkers. Really, they're not, super vocal guys towards officials. So to see guys like that get ejected and really doesn't seem warranted. It's just a weird thing. And now we're seeing, the Jazz have just spoken up recently. They think, the refs are almost out to get them. I mean, I think that's a little overstated. They're saying because they're a small market team, and like I was just telling Ben, I mean, the Spurs have been a small market team for Pop's whole time there, and doesn't seem like they get, mistreated by officials. So just kind of weird. I think the officials kind of need to take a step back, and it's just not about them, man. Like have a little pride, be the bigger man, and let the players play.
Well,
that's my big.
My favorite story so far this year was when Draymond got tossed for yelling at his own teammate. And I can't remember the exact scenario. I want to say that he tried to throw a pass to Wiseman, or Wiseman didn't make the right cut, and he starts yelling at him down the floor. Now, he did get a technical earlier in the game, but he starts yelling, and official just turns and tees him up. And he was confused. Steph was confused. Steve Kerr's like coming on trying to plead his case. They wouldn't hear it and tossed him. So I agree with you. I think, and I have a theory behind it, but I want to get Ben's thoughts before I say my theories. Go ahead, Ben.
I'm curious your theory, because my theory is what I was going to share, which is maybe it has to do with the more empty stadiums. The refs can hear even more of what the players are yelling at each other and them. And that as a result, you get a little bit more in terms of technicals. That's my working theory as to what's going on. The second part of it is whether or not the officiating is actually bad or whatever. I don't know why that would be the case this year versus others. So I'm not sure. I'm also not sure if that's true. But it is an interesting time.
So here's my theory behind it, and you guys can quote me if I'm wrong, but recently at my softball umpires meeting they kind of directed us that, okay, if we, like normally when we made a substitution, we'd go right up to them, show them our lineup card, show them who we wanted, point it out. Well, this year we can still ask questions, we can still make substitutions, but they just ask that we do it distant. So here's my thought, is that officials are trying to crack down on players coming up to them, arguing with them, because they don't want as much face-to-face interaction. So if they hear anything, see anything, if a player advances towards them, boom, they're like, it's like a zero tolerance thing. They don't want those arguments. They don't want the closeness of it. They're just trying to keep people back. So it's kind of, they're moving towards a zero tolerance to avoid confrontations.
Now, I think that's fine for high school athletics, but when we're talking about $1 billion industry and people, paying tons of money to see these specific players play in games that count towards, playoff seeding and all that, get over yourself.
Yeah.
Now, I don't necessarily think that the overall officiating has been horrible, because, dude, NBA basketball, it's tough to officiate, man. Like, these guys move faster than ever. They're bigger, stronger than ever. Like, it's a tough gig. I get it. I'm specifically talking about just be a bigger man. Okay, he's barking a little bit. He's woofing. So what? Oh, he bounced the ball to you? Who cares? Hockey, they legit get to punch people in the head, don't get ejected. Baseball managers spit on umpires and kick dirt on them until they get ejected. Throw bases. Football, constantly, you watch their mouth. They're cussing the refs out. There never is a flag for talking to an official, or never have I seen an ejection for talking to an official. Why does NBA reffing have to be so soft is my biggest.
That is actually something that begs for an explanation. And I think maybe part of that is, at least theoretically, the fans are so close in most circumstances, they can hear what the players and interactions between the refs and the players. That doesn't explain why there'd be more technicals now when there's less fans. But that might be a working theory as to why that's the case, because you're right. In like the NFL and some of these other sports, NHL, like there's more of a separation where you can't even really hear what the players are saying.
True.
So maybe, because like you're saying, I think the point of officials is to make the product better. And the criticism that I think is fair is if you take the people that you want to see in the game out, it makes it a less good product for the fans. But it does also maybe explain why the reffing is a little bit different on some of that stuff too. Because is it a bad product for the fans if you just let the players berate people all the time and they can hear it? Or would that make it a better product? I actually don't know.
I mean, look, like I think there is a line that people can definitely cross. Like, yeah, if this player is legit just cussing you out and you tell him to stop a couple of times and he keeps cussing you out, okay, dude, you cross the line, you get teed up. But if somebody bounces a ball towards you, like I'm just sorry. Like there's just two very specific ones that I just can't get over. Like JJ Redick, a super vet in this career, throw him out. Like it just doesn't make sense. Doesn't add up.
Which most of the time too, probably a lot of the frustration on, like you said, maybe bouncing a ball a little excessively probably isn't even geared towards that official. It's probably geared towards the game, their performance, teammates, the other team. They just threw the ball. You know, I guess I could see your point there. I'll cede to you there, Steele. I'll cede to you. I think you got it there. Any final thoughts on the subject, Ben?
I mean, when I coached, when I played, I never really messed with officials that much. I mean, with some maybe few exceptions.
I can think of one or two that I was present
look, there
for,
might be a few exceptions, but the point is they're not going to change their calls, right? So there's really not a whole lot of point to it most of the time. But tempers do flare during competition. So.
I'm laughing so hard because I was actually with Ben when he got his first technical, but we'll give that we'll save that story for another day.
I had to ask for it though, so
it's true, you did. But hey, this is the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Big segment coming up next. Stick around. Thanks for listening to the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. All right, I'll have to stop that earlier, but all right, welcome back to the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. We're going to go ahead and dive into some mid-season awards because right now, as we're recording this, we are just coming off the week of the All-Star break, so we're pretty much halfway through the NBA season. I think games started back up again on Thursday. We're recording this Saturday, so we're pretty much halfway through. So Ben and Ryan are just going to go ahead and give their thoughts on who wins these awards mid-season. So if the season were to end today, who would get these awards? So let's start off with the Rookie of the Year award. Right now, the top rookies are looking to be LaMelo, Therese Halliburton, Anthony Edwards, James Wiseman, Quickly. Give me your thoughts. Who gets the Rookie of the Year award mid-season? Who wants to start? I'll let you guys debate.
Well, let me start here. I'm shocked by how good LaMelo is. Because, it could have gone either way, right? Like, he's looking at his shot. It's kind of funky, just like Lonzo's was in a different way. But he plays in a relatively weak Australian league, at least comparatively to Europe. And, he has his moments, but they're not winning, and he's chucking a lot. But it turns out he has this incredible basketball savvy. He's above average rebounder because of his size. He's a great passer, and he's actually shooting really, really well right now. And he's fast. He's getting to the basket and finishing. Got a big endorsement from Draymond Green within the last week or so, saying that he'd be a problem. And it was a pretty cool segment on ESPN of him talking about LaMelo. So to me, that guy's probably, just even going by the stats, I think he's the favorite to win it and should be the winner if the season ended today. But I think it's shocking how good he's been.
Yeah.
I agree. But if you know me or if you follow me on any social media, I've been on the LaMelo Ball train for years now. I knew he would be good. I honestly, though, I didn't think he'd be this good, at least not right away. I thought he would struggle so much defensively that you wouldn't be able to play him the amount of minutes it would take for him to show how good he is, if that makes sense. He did a lot of cherry picking in high school and learned some bad habits. But, I just watched a highlight 10 minutes ago from a game tonight. He had a fake spin, reset, one dribble, corner three that was just – it was, I think, what we thought Lonzo was going to be out of college. LaMelo was all that, 15, 6, and 6. Just really started, and that's being a starter. He came off the bench most of the season.
He's shooting the three really well. So
really well. Efficiently for a rookie too. I would say he's my clear-cut Rookie of the Year. I think my runner-up, and I'm not saying it's close, but Tyrese Halliburton has been so good.
He's been playing really well.
And that's a guy who I thought, I was like, man, I don't think he should come out. And then when the Kings took him, I was like, why? Like, I don't see the fit there. But
They already had a point guard. Yeah.
And he's shown he can be a combo. Like he's a really good player, man. And like I think the world of him for sure.
And actually, it's crazy even just looking at his stats and some of his gameplay. Like, he's kind of an interesting looking player. He's a bigger guard, but he shoots funny. He shoots funny, even funnier than LaMelo in a way. Like he has a really low release point, and it's kind of like a weird set shot almost. But he shoots so well from the outside, and then has like these like runners that he can hit and everything else, that he's really a good all around secondary ball handler and guard. Really good passer. The one thing that will be interesting to see, because he's playing alongside another point guard, is if he becomes a full-time point guard, will his stats scale up, or will he become less efficient? Because he's incredibly efficient right now.
Well,
and will he be like an all-star level point guard, or just like one of these really good other guards, right?
He's averaging 13 points a game. I just pulled up his stats right now. But his 3-point percentage is 43%.
43%.
And his field goal percentage is just under 50. So I mean, he's only taking about 10 field goal attempts a game, but he's making
for a rookie though. That's a decent amount of shots in a game.
Yeah, exactly, and especially as a guy who's you're looking to be a point guard.
And you play the positions of the two best players on your team, really. And
he's averaging over 5 assists per game. It's pretty good rookie stats for like you guys said, a guy who's playing alongside another point guard.
Now the where we'll see if it can scale up or not is if he can improve as a guy that can finish around the basket and draw fouls, because he doesn't really go all the way in very often, at least to score. He has a little, like, from what I've seen, like these mid-range runner kind of things, but and this is where LaMelo surprised me. He actually goes in and finishes more than I expected.
LaMelo's
to see
body
him do.
Though is bigger and more conducive to the. I think Halliburton will get a little bigger. I mean, he's young, man. He'll get a little bigger. I think that'll help him finish, inside, or at least want to take it inside a little more.
Yeah.
But in that same vein as the rookie conversation, I want to throw out a little award here, the Anthony Bennett Award. This goes to maybe a guy that maybe was picked a little too high, didn't exceed your personal expectations or the media's expectations. Basically hasn't lived up to what we thought he was going to be so far. And the jury's still out on these guys, but do we have any selections for the Anthony Edwards Award? Anthony Bennett. Freudian slip. That's who I have, Anthony Edwards. I'll just answer my own question. I think Anthony Edwards has been okay.
Yeah.
I think my personal expectations and that of most mainstream sports media was he was going to be great as soon as he stepped on.
Well, there's been people that said that there's shades of Dwayne Wade in him, kind of thing. He's a big, strong guard.
And he's a great kid. Everything from character, you see all these interviews with Ricky Rubio and people saying, great kid, awesome. And I think he could be. But right now, you're shooting just barely over 35%.
Yeah.
You're not really helping a team win. I just thought, if we're going with him, LaMelo, and Wiseman were the top three can't miss guys. He just looks like the one that could turn into an Andrew Wiggins is what I'm worried about.
Yeah, but I would say, and you already said this, it's too early. It's also a little unfair in degrees, right? Like, and Wiggins is still a guy that's going to be in the NBA for a long time, and
10 more years,
and average 20 points a game a couple of times, right?
Yeah.
Whereas, Anthony Bennett was almost as out of the league as soon as he got into it.
Right. And I didn't want to compare these guys to Anthony Bennett. It was just a little name for the award. But I have Anthony Edwards. My runner-up, Jalen Smith out of Maryland. I liked him in college. Actually, a guy I kind of pay attention to because his play style I loved. But, top 10 pick to the Suns. Already been demoted to the G League, I think. I think if the Suns knew they were going to be this good, they might have maybe traded back on that pick or went for a guy who's a little more NBA ready that would help a playoff run. But, those are my two guys there.
So we have a couple bust alerts possibly, but at the same time, time will tell on these. I guess I don't have a lot to add yet, just because so early.
Yeah, if I had to give it to somebody, I got to go with and I actually I'm not going to blame the player on this one. I'm going to blame the organization that drafted him. I'm going with Obi Toppin of the New York Knicks because I think he's getting treated a little unfairly by going to the Knicks, and how I think the Knicks had higher expectations for him than what he was going to give you this early in his career.
Knicks always think higher expectations.
Well, and that's my
Knicks been
point.
good this year though.
Yeah,
for them.
Yeah,
they've been all right.
Yeah,
for them, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So Ben, you're not. It's too early to tell for you. Hey, that's fine. I'm not.
I mean,
no
I guess
disrespect here.
It's just granted we're going on the half season of work, but
Right.
I think I feel more safe talking about the couple that I think have done really well than expectations coming out of college versus reality so far.
That's fine. Let me be the bad guy.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll let you have that. All right, let's move on to our next award here, the Defensive Player of the Year mid-season. Rudy Gobert, Joel Embiid, Miles Turner, Giannis Antetokounmpo, or LeBron James. Mid-season defensive player.
I mean, I think me and Ben both agree on this. We kind of are in the tank a little bit for this guy, Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For years and years now, he's changed, basically offensive game plans when you play the Jazz. It's so tough to go in around the basket with him. You're not getting offensive rebounds when he's in there. I mean, he kind of just changes the whole complexion of a game.
Yeah.
When you play a team, one guy. So maybe he doesn't, have more blocks than this guy or more steals than this guy, but his length and athleticism and the way he protects the rim is just and
different. Also, I think the way he plays allows the Jazz to scheme their entire defense a certain way and makes other guys that might be okay defenders into better, maybe even above average ones.
Well, because you got the protection behind you to play a little more aggressive.
Yeah, so I think I think that's true on offense and defense for the Jazz for him, and they got the league's best record. So I'd say if the season ended today, he would be the favorite to win it, and I think deservedly so.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I
think the record definitely helps that argument.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say if they were sixth in the West, maybe we could look somewhere else, Joel Embiid or one of these other guys, but you're helping your team become the best team in the league right now. I got to give it to Rudy.
Could an argument be made for Giannis maybe, though?
I mean, Giannis is still great.
I love watching him play.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that hurts Giannis's case maybe to some degree is it just doesn't seem like the Bucks are quite as good as they were the last 2 years, 2 regular seasons at least.
Right. And they've been injured. I mean, Drew Holiday was out, but with him healthy, that's where we'll see. Because realistically, Eric Bledsoe's a good defensive guard, point guard especially. Drew Holiday's just that next step up from him. So realistically, with the pieces they've added, they should be better defensively than they have been, and they just haven't. So it's tough to give a guy like Giannis an award like that when his team hasn't been as good defensively as they have prior.
Yeah. Right. So and I think it goes along with that. Now you can't say maybe it'd be tough to make the argument for sure unless you watch a lot of film, but it doesn't seem like he's any better than he was last year when he won it all. If anything, it seems like he's a little bit of a drop off, but
Coach of the Year mid-season, Doc Rivers, Quinn Snyder, or Steve Nash? Ben, you made a little face there. What are you thinking?
Well, I think throwing Nash in there is interesting because Brooklyn has gone a little bit of a run. First year coach. I think sometimes those are the kind of guys that kind of get it. It's people that outperform expectations. The Sixers kind of being a lot better than they have been, I think makes Rivers probably the favorite for this right now.
Yeah.
The Jazz being as good as they have been, I think also makes Quinn Snyder be right there. So I'd say those are probably the top two. I would lean towards, it's going to probably go with some kind of narrative. Which one do you think has the better narrative? because the Jazz are already pretty good and just got a little bit better versus it seems like the Sixers are going another level up maybe. So maybe that makes it Doc Rivers. What do you think, Steele?
I mean, I go Quinn Snyder. Here's so with Doc, and did a great job there. I mean, he always does a good job, but I think there's a little more roster, reconstruction than just X's and O's coaching, styles, because they went from having no shooters and making Embiid be their only basically shooter. And you add shooters now. You draft a guy like Tyrese Maxey who can shoot it. You bring in Seth Curry. You add pieces now who give you, that spacing on the floor. And you add Doc. Doc's always been great out of timeouts, inbound plays, sideline plays. He's great at all that stuff. And Nash, one thing that's underrated about Nash is he dealt with all that Kyrie, going to burn sage intense, whatever he was doing for, 3 or 4 weeks. He dealt with that very well.
Yeah.
And basically brought in Harden. And, I'm bringing in MVP. You were bringing in a guy who a lot of people were bashing for the way he was acting. Is he at strip clubs? Is he taking the game seriously? Like, dealt with a lot of weird ego stuff.
That's true.
Seamlessly. It has probably a title contender. So kudos to him.
And Durant's been injured a lot lately, so then
he's missed time. My pick's Quinn Snyder, though.
Yeah,
been a fan of him for a while.
And I don't know if this is unfair to him, but I feel like Nash, both having played for him and then bringing on Mike D'Antoni, who just got done coaching, Harden all these years, makes it kind of feel like just a D'Antoni-ish kind of team.
It does.
But maybe that's your personnel too, so maybe that's not fair to Nash because maybe he has other things that he's trying to do with it too. But and maybe that's just what the league is now. It's a D'Antoni-like league. But I almost feel like having D'Antoni on the bench right there makes me feel like it's kind of an extension of his coaching tree more so than Nash.
So true. I think because he's on the bench, it makes it a little weird because any coach that comes if you're under another coach and that's who you learn from and you're part of his coaching tree. We don't give Dean Smith credit for Roy Williams's wins. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's on the bench with him, obviously, or we don't give, certain Patriots coaches, we don't give those wins to Bill Belichick. So it's a little unfair to Nash, but I mean, D'Antoni is on the bench. He probably does have a huge influence on it. But I mean, hey, shout out Steve Nash. I think we all knew he'd be a good coach.
I agree with that, and that's what the point I was going to make. I was going to give a little shout out because again, he's doing this in his first year. I mean, I know he's got an all-star lineup.
I mean, look, he has the best offensive team of all time. I'm not trying to say anybody could do it.
Right.
That's why I pointed to him, kind of handling the weird stuff that was going on with the team, trading guys, bringing guys in. But at the end of the day, I mean, you have 3 of the best offensive players the game's ever seen on one roster. So you should probably win,
Yeah. All right, this next award, and I think this is my favorite one. I'm excited to hear your guys' thoughts on this. The Kevin Martin Award. Steele, you want to go ahead and explain this one?
So, in Kevin Martin's heyday for the Sacramento Kings, they were woeful. They were an abomination to basketball. I mean, just one of the truly awful teams in the NBA for years. But during that time, Kevin Martin was, balling out. 26, 25, some points a game. Decent rebounds, decent assists. He was doing his thing. But it was just numbers. I mean, he wasn't really a top 10 player. So this really just an award for guys who are balling out on a bad team. And I kind of have a high-end one and a low-end one. High-end meaning I'm not taking away from that guy. He would be a baller on any team. He just happens to be putting up great numbers for a trash team.
Yeah.
So, Ben, I think me and you probably have the same high-end guy, and mine's Bradley Beal.
Well, so yes, though I'd also add Nikola Vucevic from the Magic.
Yes.
And really I struggle with putting them in this category to some degree because I think they're, like you said, almost too good for it.
Too good. They are.
they're legitimate all-stars. And I think if they were put on another team like a contender, their numbers might not be as huge, but they would still be really, really good players. To me, when I think of like the Kevin Martin Award, I think of guys that are really putting up numbers on a team because somebody has to. For me, it's a guy like Jeremy Grant going to Detroit and averaging
that would
20.
be, I would agree. Jeremy Grant's my guy.
Or like a Malik Beasley averaging 20 for the Timberwolves when they can't win games.
Yeah.
Colin Sexton,
thank you.
Maybe fits this mold too, but maybe
once
that's
I
not
dug
fair
into his metrics a little bit,
they're efficient.
He's really efficient. I mean, that's the thing. Like, it's the NBA, folks. I mean, they're going to score 100 points. No matter who's on the team, they're going to get to 90 to 100. So somebody's got to score those points. So Colin Sexton, though, he's kind of nice. I mean, he's better than I thought he was going to be. He really is balling.
One other thought that I put for this one, I don't know if I'd pick him for it because Atlanta's actually turned it up and is right there. Well, I shouldn't say turned it up, but they're in the thick of the Eastern Conference playoff race. Is Trae Young, to me, could be a guy that fits this mold if they fall off again. And
if he might not ever contribute to actually winning basketball.
And that's what I'm getting at. Like, even though he puts up Steph Curry like stats or Dame Lillard like stats, and obviously you can see something like them in him.
Shot making.
I'm not sure if he is actually contributing to success the same way those two guys do. And if that ends up playing out and being the case, then maybe he might be a multiple time winner of this award.
Yeah. And he's just a super liability on defense. I mean,
you got to plan around it.
You really do. Where Dame has never been a good defender. Steph's always been an average, pretty decent defender. Dame's never been a good one, but he's just not as big a liability.
Yeah.
And he makes up for it way more on the offensive end.
Yeah.
So I think we only got one left, right, Mitch?
One left, the big one. Here it is. Who is the mid-season MVP? Embiid, LeBron, Jokic, Giannis, Dame Lillard, Steph Curry. I'm interested to see this one. I think I know where both of you are going.
Well, here's this. I think realistically we might pick the same one, but I think in our hearts we have two different ones. If I'm guessing right, I'm going with Embiid.
Poetic.
I'm going with Embiid, but I think Ben might agree, but he wants to go with Nikola Jokic. If I'm not wrong.
You're not wrong. So Embiid.
I know my guy. I think
because they have the best record in the East, right? Yeah. And I mean, Embiid did just get hurt, so let's hope this doesn't hurt his season
for sure
going forward. But if you go right now, he's having one of the greatest center seasons since
30 and almost
forever,
12,
right?
A monster on defense. I mean, he's so good.
He's one of the highest efficiency volume scorers we've had since like Adrian Dantley or something ridiculous.
Sir.
I mean, not counting Steph Curry, who's ridiculous for a different reason. And he's doing it with all post-ups and other things that he can do because he can shoot a little bit from both mid-range and three as well.
He can put it on the ground, drive to the –
He's probably it in midseason. I mean, I think LeBron would get a lot of play here too, but I think it's probably Embiid. But I'm going to be honest. Jokic is having a better season. And People get mad when I say this.
Yes.
Jokic's numbers are even better than Embiid's because of his insane passing ability on top of being a 3-level scorer. Mm-hmm. And while Jokic isn't the individual defender Embiid is, because he doesn't block shots really, he actually is in the top 10 of the league in steals, and his efficiency numbers on defense suggest he's good. I don't know if it's true or not.
I don't believe him.
Most people don't, but how's Denver a passable defensive team if he's as bad as people think he is? True. So to me, I think Jokic is actually having the best season. And if their record was, 3 games better, because they've lost a lot of close ones this year, he's in the thick of the conversation and maybe even the favorite for it. Here's my bold prediction. If the Nuggets get to even the 3 seed in the West this year, especially with Embiid having a couple weeks off, I think Jokic becomes the favorite towards the end of the year if he maintains his current level of play.
I can see it.
I mean, I think that definitely will happen. I think, like you said, the numbers from a center like we've never seen, and from almost anybody we've ever seen. I mean, the efficiency, they run the offense through him. He gets everybody involved.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta imagine that's such a fun from being a former, like even as a high school player, like to play with a guy like that. That has to be such a fun environment to play with, you know.
You know, and I was thinking about this earlier today. You know, to make my case for Jokic to some degree. There's no good answer for what he does. I mean, you know, in the dribble handoff game or the pick and roll game, because he's such a good passer and can shoot from both the mid range and three, and then abuse you in the post if you switch, there's really no answer for him. And then if he's in the post and you double, he's a better passer than he is scorer.
Yeah.
So he's going to kill you. But if you don't double, he's literally bigger than every center in the league and is skilled. Now he can't jump. Like he doesn't have athleticism, but he's just so good. Like it's not.
I think he's so dangerous from that area between the foul line and the 3-point line when they start the offense from right there and he catches it and they just run their stuff from there. Because even if it gets down to the last 6 seconds of a shot clock, I mean he has the skill to just either back you down, hit a 1-foot dirt shot, like it just. It's almost as long as they get a shot with him having the ball, it's usually always a good look. Yeah. It seems like even if he misses, you know, it's always a good look that you want.
Now, let me end with I think it's still Embiid.
Right.
If you're going with the season ending today, just because of the record, but low key, watch out in the second half of the season, not just for Jokic, but if the Nets continue to play at this level and James Harden continues to play at this level without Durant there.
Well, and that's the thing. If KD comes back and can that's my one. You say Jokic, I say if KD comes back, continues to be this 30 per game scorer on the best team in the East, I think he now becomes a front runner, you know.
Well, and maybe that somewhat hurts the Nets because they have too many front runners in the same team.
Yeah,
because,
I think they'll all take. I think they'll take votes from each other. I really do. I don't think you'll get.
And then I'd also say watch out for the LeBron case to be made this year.
I was just going to say that because he's doing it without Davis.
Yeah, especially if they get to the 1 or 2 seed in the West, and if Embiid misses any substantial amount of time, LeBron's going to become – there's going to be a huge narrative that picks up for LeBron saying not only does he deserve it for everything he's doing this year and year whatever, but that he should have got it in previous years, which I think is debatable. But nonetheless – he's going to get, I think, a huge push for this. If you went by most valuable, I think Giannis is still up there. And I think Dame and Steph are both like in the conversation for sure, because without those guys on those teams, they wouldn't be nearly as good.
Agreed. All right. Well, hey, this is a good stopping point. We're going to go ahead and take our last break. We're going to come back and wrap this up. As always, let us know your thoughts. Give us your shout outs to who you think gets some of these awards. And you know, if you, as always, if you disagree with Ben and Ryan, let us know because we want to hear that debate. This is the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. We're going to wrap it up coming up. Thanks for listening to the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. All right, we're going to wrap this thing up on the Basketball Give and Go Podcast. We just wanted to mention how just the conference tournaments for college have just been a crazy thing with, you know, and it just doesn't seem like all season they seem to be doing good. And then all of a sudden here, like we have teams shutting down and it's just a wild. So, but anyways, we're not going to get into that tonight because as we sit here right now, it's Saturday. Tomorrow is Selection Sunday. So we're actually going to put out the first Give and Go Basketball Podcast special event. And we are going to do a special pick'em episode where Ben, Ryan, and I are actually going to fill out our brackets, and then we'll post them for you, and then we'll kind of go through our brackets and let you know who we think we're going to win. Be on the lookout for a fast break that we have coming up. Also dealing with the tournament, we're going to go through a quick fast break on who we think the biggest snubs of the tournament were. And then, as always, make sure that you're following us on Facebook. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. You know, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. We do have new content coming out for you with ISO shots, so be on the lookout for those. And then, like I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the episode, we going streaming here. So be on the lookout for us going to Spotify, Amazon, Apple. We're going to try to hit them all if we can. So make sure you're following us. If you're liking what we're saying, make sure you hit that subscribe button. That really helps us out. So anyways, final thoughts. Steele.
All-Star weekend was cool. Second half of the season starts. Teams making a playoff push. Looking forward to seeing some of that. My Homer Heat self comes out, and gotta say the Heat 9-1 their last 10, looking like a team that went to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, starting to get healthy. I think them and the Nuggets start to make a push, and I'm looking forward to March Madness.
Ben, final thoughts?
Just keep paying attention to the new content, and also pay attention in the coming weeks and days, because we're going to start getting our merch out there a little bit. So, big fans of the podcast. We can make you a walking billboard before too long.
I was impressed with myself because I went an entire episode without mentioning North Carolina, but I guess right here at the end, I couldn't do it. But it was a good week for them Tar Heels, even though they lost. But anyways, we'll see what the tournament brings. Hey, this has been another episode of the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Again, stay tuned for all the new content that we have coming out. Thanks a lot. Peace.
I'm Ben Sperry, and this was the Give and Go Basketball Podcast.